All right, let's talk about Asmodeus. We're going to go on a little archaeological dig, so to speak, to uncover how the story of this one demon has been completely reshaped by different cultures over thousands of years. You'll see that each one bent his story to reflect its own deepest fears and its secret desires. So, who is this guy, really? Is he some kind of cosmic force of pure destructive wrath? Or maybe a possessive, jealous lover who murders people on their wedding night? Or, and this is where it gets weird, is he a celestial professor of geometry and astronomy? The fact that he's been seen as all of these things, well, that's the puzzle we're going to try and solve. And this slide right here, it just lays it all out perfectly. You've got this ancient Persian idea of him as a huge, impersonal force of cosmic violence. Then, fast forward a couple thousand years, and Christian theologians have him neatly filed away as the demon of lust. How in the world does a concept change that much? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. We're digging down to the first layer, ancient Persia. This is where we find the absolute earliest trace of the entity that would one day become Asmodeus. So here's the original blueprint, Ahejma Deava. Now, in the ancient Zoroastrian language of Avestan, this isn't really a personal name. It's more like a category of destructive energy. Ahejma is the very principle of wrath itself. It's a weapon used by the ultimate force of darkness against truth, order, and all of creation. So we're not talking about some monster hiding in your closet here. This is a fundamental concept of cosmic evil. What's so cool is you can literally watch the name travel right here on this slide. It's not just the words changing, though. As the name moves from Persian to Hebrew and then to Latin, the entire idea of who or what this demon is gets fundamentally rewritten. Let's dig down to the next layer and see what happens when this Persian concept gets adopted and, radically changed by Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. This is where that abstract principle of wrath really starts to get a personality. This timeline is basically a roadmap of his bizarre career path. Seriously, he goes from a jealous murderer in the Book of Tobit to a teacher of forbidden knowledge, then an adversary of kings, and he finally lands the job of demon of lust during the Counter-Reformation. What a ride. The Book of Tobit is really his first big break as a character in a story. And the most important thing to notice is the change in scale. He's not a cosmic force anymore. He's an intensely personal domestic threat. He's driven by what the text calls a love for a woman named Sarah, which is really just a possessive, murderous jealousy. And get this, he isn't defeated by some divine power, but by folk magic, the smoke from burning fish organs. Evil has literally come home. Now let's jump over to the Talmud. Here, he's called Ashmedai, and he's way more than just a monster. He's a political rival to the wisest man on earth, King Solomon. He actually takes over the throne for a while, but he's also this really complex figure who, in a strange way, reveals the hidden workings of divine justice, making you question everything you thought you knew about wisdom and power. Okay, so check out this contrast. It's fascinating. In Christian demonology, the big impulse is to categorize everything, right? So Asmodeus gets neatly filed under Luxuria, the demon of lust. But in Islamic tradition, he's identified with a jinn named Sakra. There, the focus stays on the story. He's the one who takes Solomon's throne, not because he represents one specific sin, but as a direct punishment from God because the king messed up. On to the next layer. During the Renaissance, Asmodeus gets a totally new job. In these magical books called grimoires, he's not just some tempter anymore. No, now he's a valuable source of practical, even scientific knowledge. I mean, just look at this resume. In the famous grimoire, The Lesser Key of Solomon, he's listed as this great king who teaches the liberal sciences. This isn't about sin anymore. It's about power and knowledge. He can find buried treasure, he can make you invincible, and he can answer any question you ask him. It totally reflects what the early modern era was all about: learning, ambition, and getting ahead. And then, you get this. The same demon who can teach you geometry shows up looking like this absolutely bizarre, monstrous mashup. He's got 3 heads, a bull, a man, and a ram, a snake for a tail, and he breathes fire while riding a dragon. This incredible clash between his intellectual gifts and his grotesque appearance is just classic grimoire tradition. And his evolution didn't stop there. By the 19th century, in this famous Dictionary of Hell, he gets another promotion, manager of Hell's casinos. This is just a brilliant example
of how his identity keeps shifting to mirror what society is worried about. In this case, the rise of financial speculation and the moral panic over games of chance.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe the deepest layer of our dig. In the modern era, we pretty much stop looking for Asmodeus in the world around us, and we start finding him inside ourselves. This right here is the real game changer. It's a fundamental shift in perspective. For most of history, Asmodeus was a real external being you had to fight or banish or control. But in the modern view, which is heavily influenced by psychology, he becomes an archetype, a symbol for a part of our own minds, like our repressed desires, that we need to understand and integrate, not cast out. And you can see this trend everywhere. For the 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi, he was a principle of passion without spirit. For Aleister Crowley, he was literally a, quote, portion of the human brain. For followers of Carl Jung, he's a perfect stand-in for the shadow self. And in some modern traditions, he's even been flipped completely, becoming a positive symbol of liberation and sexual freedom. So, after digging through all these layers, what have we actually found? We've seen Asmodeus as a cosmic force, a jealous lover, a king, a scientist, and a psychological complex. I think the core takeaway here is that he's never, ever been just one thing. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Studying a figure like Asmodeus isn't really about studying a demon. It's about studying the cultures that imagined and reimagined him over and over again. He's like a screen where societies project their biggest fears about chaos, about sexuality, about forbidden knowledge, but also their deepest desires for power and understanding. You know, there's actually a term for this in sociology, a boundary object, and Asmodeus is the perfect example. The name and a few key ideas stay the same, so everyone knows who you're talking about. But the concept itself is so flexible that Zoroastrians, rabbis, inquisitors, magicians, and psychologists can all adapt it for their own unique purposes. Which leaves us with one final fascinating question. I mean, think about it. From video games to TV shows, we are still reinventing Asmodeus today. So if he's always been a mirror, what does our 21st century version of him, as a pop culture icon, a psychological symbol, a figure of liberation, what does that truly say about our own anxieties, our desires, and our modern understanding of evil itself?